Being selected at the top of the NBA draft is one of the dreams of tens of thousands of prospects around the world every year. However, picking someone in the draft is a gamble by the franchise on a player. The city's expectations are focused on a young player with no professional basketball experience. These are some of the biggest busts in NBA history. We begin our story with Markelle Olowakandi. The Nigerian was the #1 pick in the 1998 draft at a time in history when the African centers generated great expectations thanks to the figures of Hakeem Olajuwon and Dikembe Mutombo. However, Olowakandi never came close to the level of these two stars. The player managed to enjoy a 9-season career in the league, even being a starter during the first half of his career. However, he is the player with the second worst offensive rating in NBA history, only behind Manute Bol. His strength was defense, but his offensive bag was so poor that not even his skills on the other side of the court compensated. One of the worst picks won in draft history, he somehow managed to stick around the league for some time. However, this title has a clear winner, and it is none other than Anthony Bennett. The small forward was selected by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first position of the 2013 draft. It was rumored that this draft was going to be very weak because of the time, but in the end, it has had good players. One of them was two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo, but just as no one expected the Greek to be so good, which made him fall to pick 15, no one expected Bennett to be #1. However, his name was the first one David Stern mentioned in that draft. Expectations and pressure mentally overcame Anthony, who had a really disastrous start in the NBA. Bennett was not only traded after the end of his rookie season, but spent each of his 4 NBA seasons with a different franchise, with general managers trying to find the reason why the forward was picked so high. With career marks of 658 points and 472 rebounds, it seems that the player will never step on an NBA court again. There are times when being considered a bust depends not only on your individual performance, but on how the players around you in the draft performed during the season. A perfect example is the case of Sam Bowie. Sam was a center who had the ability to shoot the three-pointer. Not with great volume, but this type of player in 1984 was certainly something to get excited about. And the truth is, his career wasn't that disastrous. However, his name went down in the history books for another reason. This draft is one of the most talent-laden in history, including legends of the renown of Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, or Michael Jordan. Yes, arguably the greatest player in NBA history was the #3 pick in the 1984 draft. And I'll give you a hint, Olajuwon was the #1 pick. Guess who Portland selected with the second pick? Another player who was the second pick in the draft and didn't live up to expectations was Derrick Williams. The forward from the University of Arizona was one of the top young athletes in the world. However, his performance on teams like the Timberwolves or the Kings never really panned out despite his incredible athletic ability. But the opposite is true for Sam Bowie. The players who were drafted after Derrick Williams were Enes Kanter, Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas, Jan Vesley, Bismarck Biyombo, and Brandon Knight. Selecting right was no easy feat in a draft class like that. Top quality players such as Klay Thompson, the Morris brothers, Kawhi Leonard, Nikola Vucevic, Tobias Harris, or Jimmy Butler left later in the year. And if that wasn't enough, Isaiah Thomas was the last pick of that draft. Without a doubt, the perfect definition of a deep draft. The story of our next player on the list is well known in the basketball world. During the 2007 draft, most GMs around the league considered Greg Oden to be the new Shaquille O'Neal. The center's highlights during his summer league with the Portland Trail Blazers gave reason to get excited. But the player who would almost certainly come in second was none other than Kevin Durant. Oden was never able to enjoy continuity in the league because of terrible knee injuries that only allowed him to enjoy 3 seasons in the NBA. Greg played well during the times he was able to play, but his injuries affected his athleticism. However, KD has become one of the best scorers in NBA history from the small forward position. Despite what many people think, virtually every GM in the league would have selected Oden if they had the first pick. The case of Markelle Fultz is one of the most incredible. The combo guard out of the University of Washington was an incredible scorer at all 3 levels. In addition, His incredible ball handling caught the attention of NBA players themselves, such as Kevin Durant. The Sixers, who had the third pick, went all in on the player who was almost certainly going to be picked first. So the Sixers decided to trade a first-rounder along with the third pick to select Markelle Fultz. From that point on, a huge drama began. Fultz was injured and had lost much of his shooting skills from, allegedly, a motorcycle accident. His career never really took off in Philadelphia, which eventually traded the player to Orlando in exchange for Jonathan Simmons. The point guard has done a good job in his time with the Magic, but ligament injuries have greatly stalled his career. The problem comes when you realize that the Boston Celtics selected Jason Tatum with that third pick. Another case of a player whose draft pick has gone down in history was Darko Milicic. The Serbian was far from being a player commensurate with the second position that the Detroit Pistons invested to have his services. Averaging 18 minutes per game in his career, Milicic was only able to start in the NBA during his first season with the Memphis Grizzlies. However, the worst part of Milicic's choice was undoubtedly the options that were available. The Cleveland Cavaliers selected LeBron James with the first pick of the 2003 draft, to no one's surprise, but the Pistons chose Darko over players of the level of Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, or Chris Bosh. 3 players who will be in the Hall of Fame instead of a player who played less than 5 full seasons in the NBA. Milicic's skills were greatly overrated, but that has been the case throughout the history of the league. Another great example is Jahlil Okafor, who was picked by the Philadelphia 76ers in the 2015 draft. The center who played at Duke was considered one of the best technical prodigies in history. His footwork and ability to play with his back to the basket were reminiscent of great talents of the 1990s. However, the NBA had changed a lot, and his skill set did not adapt to the new times. After a good rookie season, Okafor's inability to defend a pick and roll ended up leaving him out of the league in just 6 seasons. Luckily, neither of the first 2 picks ended up becoming superstars. But Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are much better players than Jahlil. When it comes to drafting, it's not just talent that matters. For the first picks, it is very important that the players being drafted have a good mentality. The pressure they are under during the early stages of their career is capable of destroying some of the best talent in the world. These have been some of the biggest busts in NBA history.